What's up, everyone? Michael Heath with Get Automating, and today we're going to kick off a series talking about APIs through the lens of the Power Platform. Now, this thought came to me from watching some videos from Microsoft MVP Steve Weiner. He was doing a series on Graph API. The link to his channel is below. Subscribe to his channel. Subscribe to my channel first. And I thought, well, this shouldn't be off limits to folks in the Power Platform. In fact, Power Platform can be used to make your life a lot easier when using Graph APIs or APIs in general. Now, Steve's an Intune guy. He's also a guy of many things. I'm not an Intune guy, so I thought, where can we use this within the Power Platform? My wife says I need to be more in tune with my emotional intelligence.
Get automating. Enhancing humans daily.
All right, so API, application programming interface, sounds scary, but we're going to get through it and we're going to do it in low code terms. So before we get started, let's talk about what is an API. It's a way for things to communicate. Think of it as if you're at a restaurant. You're going to order your food. You're going to tell the server what you want. You're not going to go back to the kitchen and cook it. No, they're not going to let you do that. You're going to get yourself booted. So you're going to tell them that, right? That's kind of what the API is doing, right? In the back end, they're preparing it, they're getting your data ready, and they're going to send it out to you. They're going to bring that data out to you. Unless, of course, they 86 it, they don't have it, you're going to get an error response. Let's head on over to the Lappy for an example. Right, no choice but to get it on. Here we are in Graph Explorer. Now, if you watched the video, Steve Weiner's video, check it out because he goes into a little more detail here. I'm introducing this as an example to translate what this looks like into what you're going to see in Power Platform. Essentially, what we're doing here is we're calling a resource. We've got a number of different ways we can request. Today, it's all about GET. We'll talk about those other requests. When we talk about placing the order at a restaurant, right? This is what your order is. The most important part here, which is the base URL and then the endpoint. So as you can see, for example, I'm calling the Microsoft Graph API. In this particular use case, I'm hitting the endpoint meet. And so let's take a look. When I execute this query, I'm placing my order. It's going to go back, check out the kitchen, look for the ingredients, prepare the dish, and send it back to me. So we'll run this query. We have my display name, my given name, and a number of different other resources that come with it. This idea of API is not unique to Microsoft Graph. So I'm in Postman now. Postman is a tool to work with these APIs. If you're new to APIs, check out Postman because it can be really, really helpful, especially if you're rapidly looking to experiment. But what I've downloaded here is what's called a collection of APIs. It already has a lot of the components here. The requests are built out for me, so it makes it really helpful. So what I have here is an API, an order, if you will, to get all characters belonging to Harry Potter. So as you can see here, what's interesting is, oh, well, wait a minute. We have something that says render here. Well, that's a variable, which is another thing that makes this process really easy. But you can see here that it's got a base URL. So we've got the base URL, and then we've got the endpoint that we're hitting in this particular use case, characters. It's going to come back with some data for us. Now, what's really cool about Postman is you have a number of different ways to visualize this data. This is cleaned up a little bit. Raw format kind of looks garbled. We've come back now and we've got the ID of the character here, Harry Potter, got alternate names and a number of different other things about that character, and the list goes on. And we can even view this in a different way. This particular one is really cool because it has some images associated with it. But that's besides the point. What we've done here is placed our order and our orders come back. Now, interestingly enough, we could take this information right here and we've got another API where we can get character detail by that API. We can go ahead and send that as well. And now we're getting Harry Potter's data here, just that particular ID, calling out for a resource interfacing with that application, if you will, and retrieving that data. But what does this mean on the Power Platform side? So we got a long ways to go as we traverse down the rabbit hole. So let's click on an instant cloud flow here. We're going to manually launch it. We'll call this bad boy test API, and off we go. Well, you remember in the graph API, we were getting a profile. So let's come over here to Power Automate and see if we can expedite this process. All right, so I'm going to search for profile. Ooh, interesting. We've got get my profile there, and I'm pretty comfortable with the way that goes. Let's save it out. Let's do some testing. All right, so our flow has run. That kind of looks very similar. Okay, now wait a minute here. We have graph.microsoft.com, the version, and then users. If we come back over here, we've got graph.microsoft.com version and users right there. So the first lesson here to understand is these connectors are nothing more than an API. They're wrapped up in a nice little package with a bow on them, so they're easy to use. But essentially, all we're doing here is calling that API. So let me give you another example here. Here's a trigger when a new task is created. What's interesting about this is this trigger requires a few more parameters. That's because we're accessing specific endpoints. And to access that data, we need to be a little more specific with our order, and we need to point it to development and simple plan. All right, so take a look at the parameters here. We got the group ID, the plan ID here. It's making an API call. It's placing that order. The last little bit here is the buy, the stuff we need. You can see here we've got plan ID, bucket ID, title, all that good stuff in JSON format. Now we're in a good position to start using it. All right, so there you have that. APIs, big part of the Power Platform, and we're just scratching the surface. In part 2, we're going to look at how we can grab even more data and start chopping that data up so it's extra useful in our flow. And from there, we can use that data in Power Apps and Copilot Studio and almost any flow imaginable. Until then, get automating.